is something you said that I want to follow up on, which is we have seen this, for example, Linda McMahon being the head of the Department of Education, all to pretty much just tear it down. We have seen for years now this attack on public education, but also higher education, which goes back to something we established previously with Charlie Kirk, that, oh, these schools are woke and these schools are full of Marxist, Leninist, socialists. I think I'm going to answer my own question here, but is that the reason why they want to keep their family so close together and away from different universities, is because of this fear of expanding one's worldview and potentially reflecting on what they have learned for the first 18-ish years of their lives?
Yeah, it's both defensive in that way, and it's also, very intentionally kind of instilling particular values in their children. And so we talked to Rushdoony earlier. He's a great example, but you'll hear versions of this across conservative evangelicalism, which is, why would you want to put the government in charge of shaping your precious children's values? Why on earth would you do that? Again, this sense of like us versus them. If you're not with
Mm-hmm.
us, you're against us, God's enemy, this kind of thing, right? This is the common thinking here. And so they see, as kind of God's structuring of society, parental rights is a really big thing. The parents' role to raise their children, to make all decisions for their children, not to have any government interference. Now, historically, you can go back and note an interesting point, that this emphasis on parental rights emerged in the period of the civil rights movement. And so when you hear parental rights, you can also place it in the context of rights of white parents to object to government interference in their children's education by forcing desegregation, right? This
Mm.
is a relevant historical context. But in the present day, you won't hear that, but you will hear a lot of talk about, just how important instilling that Christian worldview is in your children, and not exposing them to secular ideas, to anti-Christian ideas, to the enemy. And that's true for the younger years, right? Homeschool is an important way to avoid that, or Christian schools. I went to Christian schools through much of my education, and um, for perhaps different reasons. I come from a slightly different tradition, not really evangelical, but very much the idea that a community and families have the obligation to instill Christian values in their children. And this isn't just, Christianity is not just something that happens on a Sunday. It's not just what you do in church. It's not just your devotions. It really is, it should shape your perspective on all of life. And you should be responding obediently in all of life, not just in family matters, not just in kind of moral values, but when it comes to economics, when it comes to foreign policy, right? All of life needs to reflect obedience to God. And college is often seen as a place where things go wrong too. If you made it through, like high school, good for you. But college is where things go wrong. And interestingly, I mean, secular universities are certainly not smiled upon, but Christian colleges also can come under attack. I teach at a Christian university, but it is not one that is deemed acceptable by most kind of conservative evangelicals. It is rather seen as a place where their faith will be watered down, and where they will not hold fast to their faith. And some actually say, oh, you're better off sending your kid to a secular university and making sure they join a really good ministry, because at least that's clear who the enemy is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they can hold fast to their faith. For many in these conservative spaces, they will send their kids to Liberty University, to Patrick Henry, to New St. Andrews, and there's a whole slate of other conservative evangelical
Wheaton as well.
schools. Yeah, Wheaton. I mean, they're kind of borderline now. They're taking a lot of
True.
heat because they took down that congratulations message to Russ Vogt. Russ Vogt, Project 2025,
Mm-hmm.
Office of Management and Budget, Wheaton alum. Wheaton, right, is going to have some of these more moderate evangelicals who are not fully on board with this right-wing agenda. And so it's an interesting time right now. There is a lot of infighting inside conservative spaces, and a lot of pressures from the right wing to shut down moderate voices and to pressure moderate, and by moderate I mean conservative, but not reactionary right-wing conservative,
Mm-hmm.
to pressure those institutions to bending the knee to the right-wing MAGA movement right now. I mean, it is rough inside these more moderate evangelical spaces.
One college that you brought up was Patrick Henry College. This was another statistic that was mind-blowing. Although the school accepted fewer than 100 students a year, in its fourth year of existence, it accounted for 7% of White House interns. How? How does that happen? How is there this direct pipeline?
Yep. This is a pipeline. So Patrick Henry established to serve homeschool students. And these homeschool students are networked through homeschool associations. They hold conferences. This has been going on for decades. They hold debate clubs and leagues. And then, yeah, they started a college. And these guys are well connected into the inner circles of power in the Republican Party. They have been, and they are, increasingly so. And yeah, it is a pipeline. And the idea is to raise your children according to these teachings. Apologetics, very important in these spaces. Again, debate, being able to defend your faith, being able to have all the right answers, right? This is not a place where you learn to think, critical thinking, or kind of engaging with the best of secular culture too, and kind of common grace is a theology that would push people in that direction. No, it's kind of based on an antithesis, right? There's God's truth, which we have, and then there's lies and there's evil out there. And so what they do is they train these children in this ideology, and they train them to debate. They train them in the skills of apologetics and making arguments for your faith, and give them all of the right answers on all the social issues. And then they put them into internships and into positions of power. And our government is filled with a bunch of these folks who go off to Washington D.C. to try to make America Christian again.
Mm-hmm.